Last time we built some solid domain logic, structs, enums, tests, all the good stuff. But our data? Still out of reach, like a squirrel up a tree. In this episode, we're learning to fetch. Dog joke. We'll be using the Axum library to spin up a Rust-powered web API so we can fetch dog data, update their weight, and finally make this thing start feeling like a real app. It's all in memory, no database just yet, but that's fine, one step at a time. Or one paw in our case. I'm Chris. Welcome to Coding with My Dogs.
Okay, in today's session, we are going to add a little API to our application. This API will have a couple of endpoints for getting information about the dog, and we'll also add an endpoint for updating some information. What we will do then is to make sure that we've got some in-memory data that will be shared between invocations of these endpoints. And that will allow us to keep, initially some sample data and to test out the way the endpoints work. At a later date, probably in the next episode, we will then try and wire in a database layer so that what gets updated via these endpoints gets stored into a database where we can reuse that. But anyway, let's bash out some code. Right, so we will probably be using this Axum library for providing the API that we require. I've just been reading through this. It's got, the basic features we need, but then it gets very, very powerful and complicated. So we'll probably only be scratching the surface of what this can do, especially in this episode where we're just getting started and adding a couple of endpoints that we need, but we can see how it sets up an endpoint. And in this, this is a very basic example, just returning a string, but there's more complicated ways we can do this to get in parameters from the root or query parameters and to, return a JSON body rather than just a string, which we'll see later. And I think I noticed down here, there's something about a state extractor, which can then be used to keep the shared state. And that's exactly what we're going to want to do here, which is nice. So here we are back in our app. I will add some dependencies that I did some research on that will be required for adding Axum to this. Corgi add, cargo add Axum. Cargo add cert, I don't know how that's pronounced. And cert JSON. And finally tower. I guess we'll find out a little bit more about what all these things are later. But let's take a look at our cargo.toml now. It still doesn't like that. It's just added it. Why is it not happy with that? I don't know what's wrong with that one, but let's cycle back to that if it causes us any problems. Perhaps it's not even needed. So what I'll do is go into our main.rs and let's try and just set up the most basic of endpoints just to test that this is working. So let us have a look at our main function here. We are already creating a dog as an example, so we can keep that in place. And later on, that will be the basis of our system state. But for now, let's just convert this into a method that will work as a web server. So we basically need all of this up at the top. We make this an async. Okay, how do I enable that feature? So just need to read the instructions. I'll try running this again. Hopefully it will just run over the top and replace what we've currently got with this. So, okay, that's there. So, yep, that's happy now. It's saying that's an unused import. Yep, it is unused. Let me get round to that. So, get rid of that one. And we are just going to do this hello world root. So creating a new instance of a router. It defines the route that we want to be looking at, which is just the root of the root. And then a get handler, which takes this closure, which is like a lambda function, I think, that takes no parameters. And it is just an empty block that returns the string hello world, which is fine. And then we are using this TCP listener bound to this address. And then we're telling Axum to serve the app on that listener. And await a response, which I guess will be whenever either the whole thing crashes or maybe the user exits it. So let's see what that gives us. Yeah, it's going to complain about unused variables. That's fine. We would have expected that. But if we do cargo run, what do we get? A lot of new things to compile. Allow access. So there, it is running. And it should be running on port 3000. So if we open up and there we go. Very simple. That gives us hello world. Great. That shows that Axum is working. And what do we do here? Do we just Control C to exit? That's fine. So now let's see if we can return maybe an instance of tdog and return it as JSON. So how do we do that? Okay, yep. So I think the first thing we need to do is to go into our domain types and add a serialize attribute to them, which will enable the JSON serialization to be able to work correctly and understand what it's dealing with. So let's go ahead and do that. So we need debug, clone, serialize and deserialize. Let's just copy this across and delete that one. Now we've already got that there. Let's put that in the right place. Okay, that looks better. Cannot find derive macro serialized in this scope. That's probably this. So that's obviously what the issue is. 1.0.219. Save that down. Hopefully that's updated. If we go back here, it is happy, so we can get rid of all of the junk that we added, trying to get that working. Let me just say serialize, comma deserialize, like so. Save that. Oh dear. So it's kind of happy about the main parts of this. Obviously it can't do the feeding yet because we haven't added the same thing to feeding, but it looks like it doesn't understand how to serialize naive date, which is more of a problem for us. So we'll probably have to research what we need to do in order to have some sort of custom serialization. Either that, or is there a way to tell CERD about naive date, or is there a version of naive date that supports the serialization out of the box? So yeah, let's just start off by making the same change to feeding. And this may well complain because of naive time. Which it does, of course. Does that mean if we go, yeah, so when we go back here, the only issue we've got now is naive date and naive time. Okay, it's time to go to our friend ChatGPT and see if it knows a solution to this. Okay, so that seems simple, assuming it's correct. We basically need to update our import for Chrono to tell it we want the surd as a feature. In fact, I'll ask it how we pronounce that. How do we pronounce surd? Fine. So the consensus here is it's D. Let's go ahead and use that for the rest of the demonstration. If I go back to surd, please mention it in the comments, and I'll try and resolve that in the future videos. Okay, so adding this features tag. Let's bash that into the cargo.toml. surd D. And that has indeed worked. So that's lovely. So that means the serialize and deserialize for all of our domain types is in place and appears to be working. So we need to go back into main.rs and we need to figure out how we then tell it to return the serialized version of tdog as JSON. So it's something like this. JSON, takes JSON payload. Don't need that. Can we just return that? Is it that simple? Can it be that simple? Let's just try it. Okay, it's running. And look at that. Lovely. Name, tdog, golden retriever, date of birth, simple date format, the weight, and then the list of feedings. Brilliant. That's perfect. So that gives us what we need to get started. Next up, we'll try and implement the state management that we require for this. But let's take a look at the whiteboard and see what we're intending to do in today's sessions.
Okay, Captain Scrunch and Mr. T, shall we talk about what we're going to do today? So we've already got our API that's got the get dogs endpoint, and all that does is just return some JSON. Now at the moment all it's doing is taking our sample data and that's what it returns, so it's not very useful, is it? You would agree with that, wouldn't you? So what we need to do then is to have some state stored here, and then that goes to the endpoint that we create. You're not interested, but Mr. T, can you see that? Captain Scrunch? So that will be used to get all dogs, but then we can add one to get a dog by name. To get a dog by name, like T-Dog, whoever that is. And again, that's Jason. Captain Scrunch, you're not paying attention. See? And the final thing we want to do is when you put on a little bit of weight, or maybe when you lose weight, we want a patch endpoint which takes the new weight. And that will then update the state like that. Can you see, Mr. T? Mr. T? Mr. T? Can you see? And then of course that's taking in Jason to say what the new weight is. Does that make sense to all of you guys? Captain Scrunch, does that make sense? I think you're happy. Mr. T? Mr. T? Does that make sense to you as well? Okay. I think that'll do us for today. Let's get on with writing the code.
Okay, here we are again. And before we get into adding the final couple of endpoints that we're going to add to this demonstration, I want to do a little bit of refactoring just to prepare the way. So what I will do is I'll show the research that I've done here. Let me go and find back here again. So in order to refactor our endpoints and move them into their own module, what I want to do is to ensure that the state that we want to return from the endpoints and potentially modify via the endpoints is encapsulated in the correct way. So looking at the documentation here for Axum, we can see that it has this concept of letting shared state be set up like this. And this arc basically means that it's a section of memory that can be shared by different parts of the program. We will slightly modify what we've got here by adding a mutex to it as well, so that we can make sure that thread safe access to the state is controlled correctly. And we'll look at that in a minute. And then having set up that state, you then basically use this this method to add an extension, which is kind of like middleware, into this router, so that it's then available via our handler functions, and we can access that state, which we'll get to. But anyway, that's just the initial refactoring that I want to do. So let's go back and have a look at our program. And looking again in main.rs, we got to the point where we were setting up the router just once and then having this sort of hard-coded get handler, which just returns JSON here. So the first thing we want to do is to modify that as we just discussed. Okay, that does that, but obviously we need to bring in arc. Yep. And mutex. So that should be okay. Cool. Okay, yeah. So that's showing that is a moved value. That's correct. So we need to get this into better shape. Obviously, we've only got one dog in the list at the moment, so we need to make sure this is a proper array set up with our initial state, with a couple of dogs in. You may be able to guess which dogs those will be. And having done that, we can then make sure that
that is passed into our state, and the state is the only place where we then go ahead and access that. So we'll move our handler function into a separate place, and then within that handler function, we'll use that extension system, the middleware system, to extract, not to extract, to bring in the state into each handler so it has individual access to it. So let's get on and have a look at how to do that. So change this to let dogs equal, and then it's a vec. Vec bang array, like so. Dog. Indent that. And close that vector like so. Expected expression. You've got an expression. What's the problem with that? Vec bang. What is wrong with this? Why is it not happy with that? Not sure what's going on with this. Need to do a little bit of research on it. How do we initialize an array of these things? Okay, so it's literally that I had a semicolon instead of a comma there. All of that red squiggly is just for that. Okay, that's fine. Let's do the next dog. Captain Scrunch dog. Also a golden retriever. Same date of birth. He's more chonky. And we'll keep the feedings the same for these. So let's just have a look at how that works. So dogs is a vector of dog, which is what we would hope for. And then we are setting up our state with dogs. Now we can go in and create a new module, which is where we will have all of our handler functions for every single endpoint. Within that, as opposed to being within the main.rs. So let's crack out some code. Handlers.rs. So what I'm going to do, just to make things easier, I'm going to create a specific type. I'm going to create a specific type just to handle this, the form of the state that we're going to be passing around. So we can use this type as an annotation in every place where we need to use it. And so it's pub type shared dogs equals arc of mutex of vector of dog. Should complain, does it? Because it doesn't know what any of these are, surely. So I've got to get used to this with Rust, and particularly with the way the sort of IntelliSense error reporting works within VS Code. And that if you don't actually reference into the module you're developing, it'll just look like it's fine. It doesn't look like there's any errors at all. But actually, that's because it's just dead code. It's not reachable from anything else, and therefore it's not. It doesn't get touched by the compiler, and therefore we can't see any errors. So now, having done that, back here, I can now go and say I want to import the things that I need to import. No, it's not a mutex, it's a mutex. And it's in that one. And you didn't really listen to what I typed, did you? Arc mutex. Dear, just like I'll just do it myself, shall I? Mutex. Right. Okay. Happy. And dog. Fine. So that gets all of that done. I can go back to main.rs and tell it that this here, shed dogs, I can use that type, which is shed dogs. Dogs. Now this returns JSON of vec of dog. So as we did before, it's converting the array of dogs into JSON form. Probably need to include those things, but I guess this is, again, it's not being brought in from anywhere. So we do it at the top, something like pub mod handlers. Yep. Getting the hang of this now. So import Axum JSON. Import dog. That's fine, because we're not returning anything yet. Now here, we need to bring in our state. So we are saying extension. So this is just coming from the documentation that we get here, where we, does it show where the module is? Oh, sorry, yeah. So the handler here. Nope, this one. So the handler here destructures this extension that's passed in to extract the state from it. And then it shows as an extension of arc of app state, which is not quite what we want. I think we're going to be extension of arc of mutex of vec of dogs, or extension of our specific shared state type. Extension state, extracting state equals or colon is extension of shared dogs. Shared dogs? Yep. extension first. Axum extension, that looks right. Presumably need shared dogs as well, don't they? Oh, okay, it's already added that. Cool. So it's arc, mutex, avec dog, which is fine. That's what we expect. So here we need to first ensure that we've locked that mutex for our exclusive use during the flow of this particular function. So let's do that. So we'll get a local copy of dogs from that state equals state dot lock dot unwrap. That doesn't look right. So state dot lock. I guess it's a result of mutex guard. Okay, dot unwrap dot. Why does this look like this is a vector? Okay, that's a bit confusing. But anyway, so there we have it. We clone the dogs so that we are free to use this now, and we're not affecting anything that's within the array itself. And we just want to return JSON from dogs. And that's, oh, that's semicolon. Okay, so brilliant. I think that's it. And then what we need to do is to plumb in this into our main.rs. So in our main.rs, we don't need this anymore. We are defining a get handler here, which is going to be get all dogs. So, I think. And we needed to add that as we saw the layer extension. Did we bring in get all dogs? Yes, we did. Okay, this has been confusing the hell out of me, but with a little bit of advice from my helper, I've realized what the problem is not to do with the fact that the shared state is mismatched at all. It's just the fact that this handler should be async And it really does not make that clear in this error message at all. It looks like an error message that's telling me about mismatched state, but I think all I need to do is go here and say this is an async function. And the error goes away. Okay, that took a little bit of research to find out what was going on there. But anyway, that looks like it should work. So let's give it a cargo run. And there it is. That's working correctly. And I can see that we got an array coming in this time. We've got tdog and we have got csdog. Brilliant. Okay, so that's enough refactoring. That puts us in a position where we can start to implement the additional endpoints. But now I think it's time to pause for coffee. Let's get one thing out in the open. Programming languages aren't just tools, they're ideologies. JavaScript is a celebration of chaos and iteration. Python worships simplicity and readability. C# is the corporate architect, structured, polished, and unapologetically object-oriented. Rust is the stern philosopher of the bunch, obsessed with safety, precision, and personal accountability. Each language carries the fingerprints of its creator's values, and when you learn a new one, you're not just acquiring syntax, you're absorbing a worldview. This is why learning a language like Rust is so powerful. It doesn't just change how you write code, it changes how you think about code. Suddenly you're not just tossing around variables and functions, you're questioning memory access, error handling, ownership. It forces you to confront every lazy habit you've picked up and ask, why do I do it this way? And more importantly, is there a better way? When you lock yourself into one language, your thinking ossifies. Is that a bone joke? You stop exploring and you start defending your habits like doctrine. But stepping into a new language is like intellectual travel. You see your old world more clearly through the lens of the new. You realize your favorite language isn't the way, it's just a way. So don't treat languages like just another tool in the box. Treat them like lenses, each one focused on a different truth about building software. And if you're not picking up new lenses now and then, you're just staring at the world through the same dusty glass. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. It's very early days for me, and I appreciate any feedback. So, we're back for the final session. As mentioned at the start, what we're going to do here is add 2 new endpoints. One which will allow us to get a specific dog by name, and another one which will allow us to update the weight of a dog, again by its name, and then by passing in a little bit of payload with the new weight in it. And that will be via patch endpoint. So let's bash out some code. Here we are again, back in our main.rs. So for starters, let's go and add the next root which we will need, which is root and slash. In fact, we need to change the one above. We want to just say that is like, if we want to get dogs, that will get all of the dogs. And then if we get dog by name, get, and then I call it get dog by name. That'll be the name of our handler. So that all looks good. It doesn't know what that is, which is as expected. So go into our handlers, and then we're going to say we want a pub, async this time. We learn fn, get dog by name, it knows what we want. And this is going to return a JSON of dog, not a JSON vec of dog, just a JSON of dog, because it is one individual dog for this one. Cool, that's good. And then we want to pass in the same state that we had before. We also need to pass in some objects to get the path. So let's take a look at the Axum documentation again and see how we can do that. So something like this. Of course, it's going to be name and it's going to be path of string. String. So I'm not quite sure if there were multiple path parameters, does it just do it by an index, or can you tell it specifically what the path parameter is called? I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work, but we'll just try it. If I save this, we should get some errors there because obviously we need to bring that in. Whoop, I didn't say comment it, I said control dot. Import path, and it's the Axum extract path that we want. Put that down, that looks okay. So it's getting name, which is a string. So we'll do the same thing again. I want to get that. Now the difference we've got here, of course, is that it may fail. We may not have a dog with the name that we provide, or there may be funny characters in the name. So we need here to be able to look up either look up the dog and return it as an OK result, or we need to return a 404 not found. So let's have a look at that. So we need to say, so this is basically saying we want to find the dog with a given name, which is equal to the name that comes in on our path. And basically, if this evaluates to some, so we've got a result, then we assign that there, and we can just return, I believe, JSON dog. Maybe it's like an OK result. OK. Dog. Otherwise, we need to return an error result. Status code not found. So that's fine, but so did. Okay. result JSON dog. Okay, so yeah. So we need to say the return type is not just JSON here. So I believe if we do it this way, that will deal with the deal with the result type that we get coming back, and then convert that into the relevant response. We need to bring that in. Okay, so I think we need to clone that just before returning it. And that's okay. This we can now add. Okay, I'm missing the key by one. If I do Control/, that's why it keeps commenting it. So Control dot, import that. We are good. So we can do a cargo run, cargo fun, cargo run. And something didn't like path segments must not start with colon. Did I get that the wrong way around? It should be named colon. Yeah, okay, cool. So back into localhost 3000 / dogs. So hitting localhost 3000 dogs, that gives us what we had before. That's the new name for that particular path. If I do dog / tdog, it can't be found. This doesn't like the dash. Ooh, typical. Okay, there's two things. There's two ways I can deal with this. We can look at dealing with escape characters here in the the URL encoding, or we can just rename tdog and csdog without the hyphen. So I think let's do that, and we can prove it more easily that way. Maybe, did I call it dogs? No, dog / name. Okay. Maybe I got the naming convention wrong. All of the root examples it gives me are just with plain names. There's no path parameters going into them. There's no query parameters. You're kind of left to guess. Unless I'm missing something here, which I don't think I am. Okay. So let's just try this one more time. I'm just wondering if it was dogs needing, this shouldn't make any difference, but let's try that. It's probably going to fail the same way. Yeah, so path segments must not start with a colon. For capture groups, use capture if you... Okay, so I should probably have read this before. I'm guessing that means that it should look like this. As in curly name curly. Let's take a look at that. Okay. No, okay, dogs. Oh, there we go. Okay. Right. Little bit of faff there. I thought we were doing it the right way, but obviously we need to read error message when we see them, because it was quite clear when I actually read that error message how the path parameter was supposed to be formatted. Would have saved a bit of time. Okay, so cool. That gives us that endpoint. And finally, we need to now add the patch endpoint to allow us to update the weight specifically of the dog, just the weight. So let's take a look at that. So starters, this handler is going to need its own JSON payload for the actual weight update. So I prepared that earlier and we can see it here. It is just a simple struct that just has the weight in kilograms, 32-bit floating point, which matches hopefully the weight there. Yep. And we won't do weight kg, we'll just do weight to match up with what we get in dog. That's fine. Let us bring that in from Sir D. Serialize, deserialize, Sir D. And now we want to add pub async function update weight for name. So this will take in what we had before. Path parameter will still be the dog's name. We still want to bring in our state structure. We want to return the same thing. It's going to be an OK or 404. Do it like so. And finally, we need to bring in the JSON payload. Payload, which is JSON of, and then it's the weight update. Does that look sensible? Looks sensible to me. So the path name, the payload, which is our weight update, and that's excellent. So we can do the same thing here. Bring in our dogs. This is where it differs. I'd looked into the Rust documentation, and for dealing with these this mutable state, there's actually an iter underscore mut function, which basically, as it iterates, it returns each dog, in this case, as a mutable object, which means that we can quite cleanly update elements within that array as they come by. So let's take a look at doing that here. That's what we want to do. I think we'll copy all of this across. But obviously what we're doing here is very different. So we're bringing in the dog each time, and we want to say this is an iter mute, which returns a mutable of the dog that matches. If we get a match, we want to say dog dot weight equals payload dot weight, and then just return OK. OK of unit. Otherwise, we return not found. Now, potentially, we could also do some validation of the weight that's passed in, because presumably you're not going to accept a negative value, and you're not going to accept a dog that's like 500 kilos. And we could do that, and then we could return a 400 response or something like that if it doesn't match, if it doesn't pass validation. But we'll just stick with the 404 for this demonstration. So there we go. Cannot borrow dogs as mutable. It is not declared as mutable. Yeah, so we need to say it's mutable. So that's good. That allows us to mutate to that array. In fact, we can just, I believe, return status code. Okay. Is that all right? Yep. Or status code not found. Go here. So change the path so it adds /weight to the end to say what it is we're asking to update. And then patch over update weight for name. No, I don't want to pass in parameters. I just want to pass in the method name itself. Need to bring in patch. Okay, update weight for name. It is there, so it's something else. It is async. We're not making that mistake again. Path, payload, state. Looks okay. Looks okay. Okay, so spend a little bit of time trying to work out what was going on there. And again, it turns out to be the fact that we need to specifically include features here for Axum. So we need the macros feature, and that was why it wasn't able to thank you, Captain Scrunch. That's useful. Just a bit of information. Yeah, and that's why it was having trouble resolving the macros that we needed. So I've updated that. And now when I go into handlers, I get a much more useful error message. It's basically saying that because JSON consumes the request body, it has to be the last argument of the handler function. So that's probably the root of the issue that we had. So let's take that away from there. Put it down at the bottom. It's decided to delete parameter for some parenthesis for some reason. Oh dear, why is it? Let's just go back. I don't know why it's deleted half of the... It's not what I selected. Okay. Try that instead. Okay, so it seems happy with that. Seems happy with that. So let's give it a try. And I'm using the REST client extension here, so we can now go and do more complicated things by creating a local file like this, which lists the different requests that you can make. So we should be able to just double test. We should be able to just double check the original request that we tried. Okay. Let's try that again. Yep, there we go. So returns the whole set in a more comprehensible format. Just tdog in that case. And here we are going to update tdog to 41 weight. I don't know why it doesn't like that format. Oh, header name must be a valid HTTP token. Header name, it thinks it's a header name. Maybe we need an extra bit of space between them. There we go. 405 method not allowed. Okay. Why is that? Patch 405 method not allowed. Allow get, head. It's correct, isn't it? HTTP dogs tdog. That looks fine. I don't think it's causing any trouble in there. This is saying we are handling the patch. Dog's name weight. Oh, did I not include weight at the end of it? I think that's the trouble. Yep, that's it. That's all it is. /weight. Close that down. And send request. Bad request. Failed to pass request body as JSON. Key must be a string. Line 2, column 1. So it to be like this. $200, okay. Fantastic. So that means it has updated the weight. So if we call this one again, we should see the weight have changed to 41. And indeed it has. So that will do us for today. We've done a little bit of refactoring, made things look a bit neater with the original endpoint that we added. And we've managed to add a couple of new endpoints using Axum to demonstrate how you can use path parameters and how you can modify state, which is then shared with the other parts, or other endpoints, I should say. Next time, we'll try and replace this in-memory state with a bit of database work. But for now, let's see what the dogs think about our progress so far. Okay, Mr. T. Here, look. Mr. T, here, look. Look at our API. Hey, look, see? This is what we developed. I know it's just text, but you can't really understand it, but can't you see how good that is? This is all done in Rust. Huh? Can you see? It's all done in Rust. But what, are you impressed? Not particularly. Okay. Ah, T-Dog, you're back. So you wanted to see some more demonstration? Can you see on the screen here? Okay, you're just going to sit on my lap. Okay, that's not too helpful. But did you see the app? Huh? It's just API at the moment, but there's more to come. It'll be very impressive, don't you think? I don't think he's convinced. He's never happy until he sees the user interface, so that will have to do. And just like that, our app knows how to fetch. We can list our dogs, look them up by name, and even update their weight, all through a real web API powered by Rust and Axum. We're just getting our paws dirty, but things are starting to take shape. In the next episode, we'll make things a bit more official, cleaner architecture, maybe a touch of persistence, and more useful endpoints. If you haven't already, drop a like, comment, maybe subscribe. Please tell others about this weird channel you've discovered. And, as always, thanks for watching. Who's this guy here, huh? It's a new guy, all the way from Japan for you, huh? It's a Guma-chan, isn't he? Huh? Guma-chan, yes.